The metal walls of Harmony 7 Station hummed with the quiet energy that kept thousands of beings alive in the cold void of space. Ambassador Tejo walked down the long corridor toward the main conference room, his black diplomatic uniform, pressed and clean. Behind him, Admiral Haya-Jin matched his steady pace, her military boots making soft clicks on the polished floor. Dr. Sora followed them both, carrying a datapad filled with scientific reports and cultural studies. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Peace Summit began. 6 long months of sitting at tables, speaking into translation devices, and watching alien faces show emotions that humans were still learning to read. The talks were supposed to solve the territorial disputes in the Outer Rim systems, where planets rich with rare minerals waited to be mined by whoever could claim them first. Tejo stopped outside the conference room doors and turned to his team. Remember, we represent all of humanity today. Stay calm no matter what they say. Hye-Jin nodded once, her expression as hard as stone. Sora adjusted her glasses and tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the 5 major alien civilizations of the galaxy had already taken their seats around the massive circular table. Each species sat in their designated area, designed to accommodate their unique physical needs. The Veltari delegation occupied the crystal section of the table. These beings looked like living gems, their bodies made of translucent material that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. High Crystal Velnara stood as the humans entered, her voice creating musical notes as she spoke. The infant species arrives. How charming. Commander Velzak of the Kethvar race snorted with amusement. The Kethvar looked like what humans might become if they grew larger, stronger, and covered themselves in natural armor plating. Velzak's yellow eyes glowed as he looked at the human delegation. I wonder if they will cry when we tell them the truth about their place in this galaxy. The Thek delegation made no sound as the humans approached their seats. The Thek were a hive mind species that looked like large insects with multiple arms and compound eyes. HFY Thekos spoke for all of them, its voice buzzing like a swarm of bees. Human thoughts are simple and loud. They think they matter. Empress Aquella of the Morden Empire gracefully moved her tentacles as she arranged her water-filled breathing apparatus. The Morden were aquatic beings who required special equipment to survive in the station's atmosphere. Her large black eyes focused on Admiral Hye-Jin with what might have been curiosity. Such violent thoughts from such a small creature. The Luxani delegation appeared as shifting patterns of pure energy contained within specially designed force fields. Their representative, known as Brightvara, spoke in harmonious tones that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We sense potential in the humans, but potential unfulfilled is merely waste. Tejo took his seat and activated his translation device. The small machine would ensure that every word spoken would be understood by all species present. Thank you all for continuing these important discussions. Humanity hopes we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone. Velnara's crystalline form flashed with colors that the translation device interpreted as laughter. Benefits everyone? Child species, you have been in space for less than 200 years. We have guided the galaxy for thousands of years. You will accept what we give you. Dr. Sora leaned forward slightly. Our research shows that cooperation between species has always produced better results than domination. The Veltari themselves prospered when they worked with the Kethvar. During the 3rd expansion, Commander Velzak slammed his armored fist on the table. Do not speak of Kethvar history, human. Your kind was still crawling in mud when we conquered star systems. Admiral Hye-Jin remained perfectly still, but Tejo noticed her fingers tap, once against her leg. It was a signal they had agreed on, meaning she was calculating military responses to threats. He hoped they would not need those calculations today. HFY Thekos made a sound like grinding metal. Human proposals are a waste of time. Hive has decided. Humans get 3 systems. No more discussion needed. Empress Aquella moved her, tentacles in flowing patterns. The Morden Empire agrees with our Thek allies. 3 systems is generous for such a young species. You should be grateful. Brightivara's energy form pulsed with different colors. The Luxani see the mathematical certainty of this outcome. Humans lack the wisdom to govern more territory. Teho activated his data pad and projected a holographic map of the outer rim systems. The map showed dozens of star systems, each marked with different symbols indicating mineral wealth, strategic value, and current claims. Our proposal remains the same as it was 3 months ago. Humanity requests shared mining rights in 12 systems, with equal distribution of resources among all 6 species. The silence that followed was broken by what could only be described as alien laughter. The Veltari chimed like broken bells, the Kethvar roared with amusement, the Thek buzzed in harmony, the Morden made clicking sounds, and the Luxani flickered rapidly. High Crystal Velnara spoke first. Shared rights? Equal distribution? Precious human child, you misunderstand your position completely. You are not our equals. You are barely worthy of notice. Commander Velzak stood to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. The Kethvar have fought and died for the right to claim these systems. Human blood has never been spilled in glorious combat for territory. You have earned nothing. Dr. Sora consulted her datapad. Our analysis shows that these systems contain enough resources to supply all our civilizations for centuries. Competition for them could lead to conflict that damages everyone. HFY. Thekos made a dismissive gesture with multiple arms. Humans fear conflict because humans are weak. Weakness does not deserve reward. Empress Aquela's tentacles moved in what the translation device indicated was agreement. The child species may observe how adults conduct business, but they may not participate as equals. Brightavara's form pulsed steadily. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when humans have evolved beyond their violent tendencies, we might consider treating them as junior partners. Admiral Haijin spoke for the first time. Our violent tendencies? Her voice was calm and level. Could you explain what you mean by that? Commander Velzak laughed again. Humans fight like animals. No honor, no rules, no glory. You bomb cities, poison water, kill civilians. This is not warfare, this is savagery. Teho felt something cold settle in his stomach. The conflicts you refer to happened over a century ago, during our expansion wars. Humanity has grown beyond those methods. High Crystal Velnara's form brightened. Have you? Your own history shows what happens when humans feel threatened. You destroy everything rather than accept defeat. This is why you cannot be trusted with real power. Dr. Sora looked up from her datapad. Every species has dark chapters in their history. The Kethvar War of 7 Suns resulted in the destruction of entire star systems. The Veltari crystal purges eliminated billions of beings they considered impure. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. HFY Thekos buzzed angrily. Ancient history. Humans commit atrocities yesterday. Empress Aquela moved her tentacles in sharp, cutting motions. This discussion wastes time. We will present our final offer. A new holographic display appeared above the table. This map showed human space divided into sections, with most of it colored in the various shades representing the 5 alien civilizations. Only a small cluster of systems around Earth remained in human blue. Brightavara spoke with sounds like singing crystals. Humanity may retain their home system and 3 nearby worlds. The remainder of human space will become protectorates under our supervision. This ensures galactic stability. Teho stared at the map for a long moment. You want to divide up our territory among yourselves? Commander Velzak nodded. Humans have proven they cannot manage space responsibly. We will manage it for you. High Crystal Velnara added her musical voice. Think of it as guardianship. We will protect you from yourselves. Admiral Haijin leaned back in her chair. And if we refuse this generous offer? The 5 alien delegations exchanged looks that somehow conveyed the same meaning across 5 completely different species. It was the look of adults dealing with a stubborn child. HFY Thekos answered. Refusal is not acceptable option. Galaxy has decided. Humans will comply. Dr. Sora closed her datapad with a soft click. You're not offering us peace, you're demanding our surrender. Empress Aquela's tentacles moved in flowing patterns. Surrender implies you had something to lose. You are simply accepting reality. Teho looked at each alien delegation in turn. These beings commanded fleets that could destroy human colonies with ease. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's best efforts. Their combined population numbered in the trillions while humanity had barely reached 100 billion souls. But as he studied their faces, he realized something that chilled him more than their threats. They were not angry or afraid or even particularly interested. They were simply disposing of an inconvenience. Admiral Hai-Jin's fingers tapped against her leg again, this time in a longer pattern. It was a different signal, one they had hoped never to use. The quantum communication array in the Geneva Defense Complex hummed with activity, as encrypted messages flashed between Earth and the diplomatic station. President Dayun sat at the head of the emergency council table, her dark eyes focused on the holographic displays showing fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The alien civilizations were already positioning their ships near human borders, confident that humanity would accept their ultimatum. General Kyung-ho stood before the massive tactical display, his weathered face grim as he pointed to the red markers indicating enemy forces. The numbers are not in our favor. The Kethavar alone have 12 battle fleets moving toward our outer systems. The Veltari crystal ships can cut through our hulls like paper. The Thek swarm tactics overwhelm our point defense systems. Defense Minister Haiwan leaned forward in her chair. What about our new stealth technology? Admiral Dong-Su shook his head. Our ghost ships are good but not good enough to matter against these numbers. The Morden have sonar systems that can detect our best stealth fields. The Luxani can see energy signatures we cannot even hide. Dr. Minsu from the Department of Xenological Warfare had remained quiet throughout the briefing. Now he stood and activated his own display. General Kyung-ho is correct about conventional warfare. We cannot win a traditional fleet engagement. But the alien species have made one critical error in their assessment of human capabilities. President Da-Yun turned to face him. Explain. The xenological warfare expert touched his display, bringing up detailed files on each alien species. They believe they understand how humans fight because they observed our expansion wars. But those conflicts were between human factions using human military doctrine against other humans who understood that doctrine. Captain Boram, her face bearing scars from the colony wars, spoke from her position near the door. The aliens fight according to rules, honor codes, traditional tactics, acceptable losses. They have never faced an enemy that ignores all of those concepts. Dr. Minsu nodded. Exactly. The Kethavar see war as a test of courage and honor. They meet their enemies in open battle and prove their worth through single combat and glorious charges. The Veltari approach conflict like a mathematical equation, calculating optimal outcomes and minimal losses. Lieutenant Colonel Wanbin pulled up additional files. The Thek use overwhelming numbers in coordinated swarm attacks. The Morden rely on superior naval tactics and fleet formations. The Luxani treat warfare as an art form, creating beautiful patterns of destruction. President, Dayun studied the alien psychological profiles. And humans? Captain Boram answered. Humans see war as the complete breakdown of civilization. When civilization fails, we stop pretending to be civilized. The quantum communicator activated, and Admiral Hai-Jin appeared as a hologram. Her image flickered slightly due to the distance, but her voice came through clearly. I have been monitoring alien communications from the diplomatic station. They are discussing how to divide human territory among themselves. They expect our surrender within 48 hours. General Kyung-ho clenched his fists. 48 hours to surrender our freedom. Dr. Minsu activated another display showing detailed intelligence reports. Our deep cover operatives have been studying alien cultures for months. Each species has fundamental weaknesses that their honor codes and social structures prevent them from addressing. Secretary of Intelligence Yujin stepped forward. Our agents report that the Kethavar never guard their supply lines because they consider it dishonorable to attack non-combatants. The Veltari have never experienced asymmetric warfare because their logical minds cannot comprehend illogical tactics. Dr. Minsu continued the briefing. The Thek hive mind becomes confused when presented with contradictory information. The Morden have never fought an enemy that could contaminate their water supply. The Luxani have no defense against energy weapons designed specifically to disrupt their coherence. President Daun looked around the room at the faces of humanity's military leadership. Are you suggesting we use the Geneva Protocols? The room fell silent. The Geneva Protocols were humanity's darkest military secrets, developed during the worst days of the colony wars when human civilization nearly destroyed itself. They were methods of warfare so terrible that the surviving human governments had agreed never to use them again. Admiral Hyojin's hologram flickered. The alien species have made their choice. They want to treat us like children who need supervision. They want to cage us in our own space and divide our territory among themselves. Captain Boram stepped forward. Ma'am, the Geneva Protocols were created to fight other humans who understood human psychology and human tactics. These aliens have no idea what humans are capable of when we stop following rules. Dr. Minsu brought up classified files that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Project Shadow Walker trains operatives to infiltrate and disable enemy ships from within. Project Crystal Song uses sonic weapons to shatter Veltari crystal matrices. Project Hivebreak creates pheromone signals that disrupt Thek communication. Lieutenant Colonel Wanbin continued the list. Project Deep Current introduces toxins specifically designed to target Morden breathing systems. Project Darkstar uses energy-dampening fields to drain Luxani life force. President Daun stood and walked to the window overlooking the city of Geneva. Millions of humans lived their daily lives below, unaware that their entire civilization hung in the balance. These protocols were banned for good reason. They represent warfare without honor, without mercy, without limits. General Kyung-ho joined her at the window. The aliens started this conflict by demanding our surrender. They chose to treat us as inferior beings who do not deserve basic respect. Secretary of Defense Jae-hyun activated his security clearance and accessed the most classified files. The protocols are designed to win wars without engaging in direct military confrontation. Our forces would avoid pitched battles and instead target the foundations of enemy society. Admiral Hyojin's voice came through the communicator. I have been watching these aliens for 6 months. They believe their superior technology and numbers make them invincible. They have never considered that technology can be turned against itself. Dr. Minsu pulled up psychological profiles of alien leadership. Their biggest weakness is their assumption that all species fight the same way they do. They cannot imagine an enemy that would use tactics they consider impossible or immoral. Captain Boram looked directly at the president. Ma'am, humans learned how to fight dirty because we had to. Our species survived because we could adapt, improvise, and overcome any obstacle. The aliens have never faced that kind of enemy, President. Dayun turned back to the council table. How long would it take to implement the protocols? Lieutenant Colonel Wanbin consulted his files. Our deep cover operatives are already in position. Shadow Walker teams have been studying alien ship designs for months. Crystal Song equipment is already deployed in Veltari space disguised as research stations. Secretary of Intelligence Yu Jin added her report. Hive-break transmitters are hidden throughout Thek territory. Deep current toxins have been introduced into Morden water supplies in trace amounts. Dark star generators are positioned near Luxani energy fields. Admiral Hyojin's hologram focused on the president. We could begin operations within hours of receiving authorization. The aliens would not realize what was happening until it was too late to stop. Dr. Minsu brought up high tactical projections. The protocols are designed to escalate gradually. First, we demonstrate that their defenses are useless. Then we target their military capabilities. Finally, we threaten their civilian populations until they surrender unconditionally. General Kyung-ho studied the projections. Estimated casualties? The xenological warfare expert hesitated. That depends on how quickly they surrender. If they recognize the futility of resistance immediately, casualties could be minimal. If they continue fighting, President Daun finished the thought. If they continue fighting, we could destroy their entire civilizations. Captain Boram nodded grimly. That is the point of the protocols. Total victory or total destruction, no middle ground. The president looked around the room one final time. These aliens came to us demanding surrender. They offered us cages instead of freedom. They treated our reasonable proposals with mockery and contempt. Admiral Hyejin's voice carried across the quantum link. They made their choice when they decided to treat humanity as inferior. Now they will learn what happens when you threaten something humans love. Secretary of Defense Jae Hyun placed his hand on the authorization scanner. All department heads are present and accounted for. We have unanimous agreement from the Global Defense Council. Dr. Min Soo activated the secure communication network. Deep cover teams are standing by for orders. Shadow Walker operatives report ready status. All protocol systems are armed and prepared. President Dayun walked to the authorization console and placed her palm on the scanner. The machine hummed for a moment, then displayed her biometric confirmation. Authorization code Alpha Geneva 77. Implement all protocols immediately. The room filled with the quiet sounds of secure communications as orders flashed across the galaxy to human operatives who had spent months preparing for. 3 days after the failed peace talks, every major alien government received the same message. It arrived through their most secure communication channels, bypassing all their encryption and security systems as if they did not exist. The message was simple, delivered in President Dayun's calm voice with no visual image to accompany it. You have demanded that humanity surrender our freedom and accept your supervision. You have decided that we are too violent and primitive to govern ourselves. You want our space, our worlds, and our future. Very well, come and take them. But remember when the screaming starts that you asked for this. High Command, Kethvar Brultak, listened to the message 3 times before throwing his communication device across his command chamber. Primitive mammals think they can frighten the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Their desperation amuses me. He activated his fleet communications and began issuing orders for the first wave of attacks. The Kethvar war fleet entered the human system of New Sol with flags flying and weapons charged. They expected to find human ships waiting in battle, formation, ready to die gloriously in hopeless combat. Instead, they found empty space. The orbital stations were dark and silent. The planetary colonies showed no signs of life. The human fleet was nowhere to be seen. Commander Velzak led a boarding party to investigate the largest orbital station. The airlocks opened easily, as if someone had left them unlocked. The corridors were empty but showed signs of recent habitation. Food still sat on tables in the dining areas. Personal belongings remained in living quarters, but there were no people anywhere. Search every compartment, Velzak ordered his warriors. Find where the humans are hiding. His soldiers spread throughout the station, their heavy footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. They found storage areas, engineering sections, command centers, and living spaces, all empty, all abandoned. But as they searched, strange things began to happen. Warrior Gorthak reported that the lights in his section had gone out, but when other warriors arrived to help, the lights were working normally. Soldier Brendar claimed that someone had moved his equipment, but security recordings showed nothing. Fighter Kreshevo insisted that he heard voices speaking in the walls, but sound sensors detected only silence. By the end of the first day, 3 Kethvar warriors had simply vanished. Their armor was found neatly stacked in storage lockers, but the warriors themselves were gone. Security recordings showed them entering rooms that they never left, yet the rooms were empty when searched. Commander Velzak activated his emergency communications. This is not warfare. This is some kind of human trick. But the tricks were just beginning. Commander Ji-hoon and his Shadow Walker team had spent months learning Kethvar ship designs, studying their blind spots and weaknesses. They moved through maintenance shafts and utility corridors that the honor-obsessed warriors had never bothered to secure. They replaced air filters with ones that released slow-acting drugs. They contaminated water supplies with chemicals that caused paranoia and fear. They introduced computer viruses that made the ship's systems behave unpredictably. The Kethvar warriors began to turn on each other as the drugs took effect. They saw enemies in shadows and heard threats in normal conversations. Their honor code demanded that they face their fears in open combat. But how do you fight an enemy you cannot see or understand? Meanwhile, in Veltari space, the crystal beings were experiencing their own nightmare. Dr. Yunji had spent her time as a peaceful researcher learning exactly how Veltari crystal matrices functioned. She had discovered the precise frequencies that caused their bodies to crack and shatter. Hidden transmitters throughout Veltari territory began broadcasting these frequencies at low power, just enough to cause discomfort at first. The crystal beings felt a strange buzzing in their structures, like an itch they could not scratch. They ran diagnostic scans but found nothing wrong with their equipment. Then the power increased. Veltari cities began to experience structural failures as their crystal buildings developed hairline cracks. The beautiful formations that defined their civilization started to crumble without explanation. High Crystal Velnara ordered emergency evacuations as entire districts became unsafe. "How is this possible?" she demanded of her scientists. "Our crystal matrices have been stable for thousands of years." But her scientists had no answers because they had never encountered sonic weapons designed specifically to exploit their species' fundamental weakness. The humans had learned that the Veltari's greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability. In Thek space, HFY Thekos was discovering that hive minds could be hacked just like computer systems. Specialist Dongwu had created pheromone transmitters that sent contradictory signals to the Thek collective consciousness. The signals told different parts of the hive mind to do different things at the same time. Worker drones received orders to build and destroy the same structures simultaneously. Warrior drones got commands to attack and retreat from the same targets. Communication drones transmitted messages that contradicted each other every few seconds. The perfect coordination that made the Thek so powerful began to break down as the hive mind turned against itself. Thekos tried to isolate the source of the confusion, but the pheromone signals were coming from everywhere at once. Hidden transmitters and asteroids disguised as space debris broadcast confusion throughout Thek territory. The collective consciousness that had existed for millennia began to fragment into competing factions. The Morden Empire faced a different kind of horror. Their ocean worlds, the foundation of their aquatic civilization, were slowly becoming toxic. Dr. Sujin's team had introduced specially designed algae into the Morden water systems. The algae looked harmless and even beneficial at first, producing oxygen and filtering waste products. But the algae had been genetically modified to change after a specific time period. When triggered by a signal from human transmitters, the algae began producing toxins that attacked Morden breathing systems. The water that gave them life was slowly becoming poison. Empress Aquella watched in horror as her people began to sicken and die simply from breathing their own atmosphere. "How can water itself become an enemy?" she asked her scientists. But they had no answers because they had never imagined that someone could weaponize the very substance their species needed to survive. The Luxani faced the most terrifying fate of all. As beings made of pure energy, they had always considered themselves immune to physical attacks. But Dr. Jae-sung's team had created energy-dampening fields that did not just block the Luxani, they drained them. The dampening fields slowly pulled energy from any Luxani who came near them. At first, the energy beings felt only slight fatigue, but as the drain continued, they began to fade. Brightavara, the Luxani representative, felt her consciousness weakening as hidden energy drains throughout Luxani space began to activate. "This is impossible," she transmitted to her companions. "We are energy. We cannot die." But the humans had proven that energy could be converted, redirected, and consumed. The Luxani were learning that immortality was just another problem that humans could solve with the right technology and sufficient motivation. Throughout the galaxy, alien civilizations tried to respond to the human attacks with conventional, military tactics. They sent fleets to hunt for human ships that were not there. They reinforced their borders against invasions that never came. They prepared for battles that the humans refused to fight. Ambassador Tae-ho appeared via hologram. at an emergency session of the Galactic Council. His manner was as calm and diplomatic as ever. The human government wishes to inform the galactic community that we are simply responding to your declaration of war. You demanded our surrender and threatened to divide our territory among yourselves. These are the natural consequences of that decision. High Crystal Velnara's form flickered with cracks and stress fractures. What do you want from us? Teho smiled with genuine warmth. We want what we have always wanted: peace, respect, and the right to govern ourselves. The question is whether you are prepared to negotiate seriously this time. Commander Velzak's transmission was filled with static as his ship's systems continued to malfunction. This is not warfare. This is terrorism. Admiral Hyejin joined the holographic conference from her flagship. You are confused about what warfare means. You think war is about honor and glory and fair fights. But war is what happens when diplomacy fails and civilization breaks down. When civilization breaks down, humans stop being civilized. HFY Thekos struggled to maintain coherent thought as contradictory signals flooded the Thek collective consciousness. Analysis impossible. Human tactics do not follow logical patterns. Dr. Sora appeared alongside the other human representatives. Our tactics follow human logic, which is different from your logic. We adapt, improvise, and overcome obstacles by changing the rules of engagement. Empress Aquela's tentacles moved weakly as the toxins in her water supply sapped her strength. How do we stop this? Captain Huansu, commanding the stealth ship Silent Dawn, answered from somewhere in the void between star systems. You stop this by remembering that we offered you peace 6 months ago. We asked for nothing more than fair treatment and equal rights. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the ancient meeting chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices mixing in a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion. The great hall that had witnessed thousands of years of peaceful diplomacy now echoed with sounds that had never been heard before. Elder Veltari Crystalline stood at the center of the chamber, her magnificent crystal form marred by visible cracks that ran through her structure like lightning. When she spoke, her musical voice carried discordant notes that made other beings uncomfortable. Honored colleagues, we face something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans are not fighting a war. They are conducting systematic terror operations against our fundamental nature. The Kethvar delegation huddled together in their section, a sight that would have been unthinkable weeks before. These proud warriors who had never shown fear in 10,000 years of conquest now jumped at shadows and spoke in whispers. War Chief Gorthak, his armor dulled and his eyes constantly moving, struggled to find words. They do not fight. They do not conquer. They make us destroy ourselves. My strongest fighters, veterans of 100 campaigns, weep like younglings in their sleep. Empress Aquela of the Morden Empire moved slowly through the specially designed water channels that allowed her to participate in the council meetings. Her normally graceful tentacles trembled as she spoke. They have poisoned our oceans. Our children die simply by breathing the water that gave them life. How do you fight an enemy that kills by corrupting the very foundation of your existence? The Thek delegation spoke with one voice, but that voice was fractured and uncertain in a way that had never been heard before. Multiple hive primes tried to speak simultaneously, their collective consciousness fragmented into competing thoughts. Analysis impossible, patterns undefined. Human tactics violate all known principles of warfare. They fight without objectives. They destroy without conquest. They terrify without threatening. Bright Vara of the Luxani flickered weakly in her containment field, her energy form noticeably dimmer than before. We believed ourselves immune to physical destruction. Energy cannot be killed, we thought, but the humans have proven that energy can be drained, consumed, and converted. They are teaching us that immortality is just another problem they can solve. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of the reports settled over the assembled delegates. These were the 5 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, species that had ruled over thousands of worlds for millennia, and they were being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive children. Ambassador Zethmar of the smaller Rillian Confederation stood slowly. His people had remained neutral in the territorial disputes, but now his voice shook as he spoke. How many humans are actually conducting these operations? Elder Crystalline consulted her damaged data systems. Intelligence estimates suggest fewer than 10,000 human operatives are responsible for all observed activities. The silence that followed was deafening. War Chief Gorthak made a sound that might have been laughter if it had not been so, filled with despair. 10,000. The humans are destroying 5 galactic empires with the equivalent of a small patrol force. Empress Aquella moved her tentacles in patterns that expressed profound confusion. Where are their fleets? Where are their armies? We prepared for invasion and instead face an enemy that attacks from within our own systems. Bright Avara pulsed with colors that conveyed fear. They do not need fleets. They have turned our own nature against us. Our strengths have become our weaknesses. The Thek delegation buzzed with conflicting voices. Hive Prime 7 believes humans are using our communication systems against us. Hive Prime 12 insists the attacks are psychological. Hive Prime 23 claims they have infiltrated our collective consciousness itself. Ambassador Mortex of the ancient Keeper species, being so old they remembered the formation of the first galactic governments, spoke from his position of honor. In all our recorded history, we have never encountered a species that wages war in this manner. They target not military assets or strategic resources, but the fundamental assumptions that allow civilized society to function. Elder Crystalline accessed her historical databases. Our military doctrine is based on 10,000 years of conflicts with species that follow recognizable patterns. Honor-based warfare, territorial conquest, resource acquisition, technological superiority. The humans ignore all of these concepts. War Chief Gorthak slammed his fist against his armor, the sound echoing through the chamber. We cannot fight ghosts. We cannot defeat an enemy that refuses to appear on any battlefield. How do you kill what you cannot find? The Luxani representative flickered rapidly as she processed the tactical implications. They have studied us for months while we dismissed them as irrelevant. They understand our psychology, our technology, our social structures. We know nothing about theirs except that they are effective beyond all calculation. Empress Aquella raised a disturbing question that had occurred to several delegates. If 10,000 humans can accomplish this much destruction, what could 1,000,000 humans do? What could all of humanity do if they decided we represented an existential threat? The chamber filled with the sounds of species-specific expressions of horror. Crystal chimes, warrior growls, hive buzzing, tentacle slapping, and energy fluctuations created a symphony of fear that had never been heard in this place of peace. Ambassador Velstron of the Hegemony Coalition asked the question that everyone was thinking. What do they want from us? Elder Crystalline projected the last communication from Ambassador Tejo. The human diplomat appeared as a hologram in the center of the chamber, his manner as calm and reasonable as ever. Humanity wants what we offered 6 months ago, shared mining rights in the disputed systems, recognition as equal members of the galactic community, respect for our territorial sovereignty. Nothing more, nothing less. War Chief Gorthak stared at the hologram. The same terms they proposed before we threatened them. The Thek delegation managed to achieve temporary unity. Confirm. Human demands unchanged. Territorial requirements modest. Resource requests reasonable. Military objectives limited to defensive positioning. Bright Avara pulsed with realization. They are not trying to conquer us. They are teaching us to respect them. Ambassador Tejo's hologram continued with words that chilled every being in the chamber. We understand that our methods may seem extreme to civilizations that have enjoyed peace for so long, but you forced this choice upon us when you demanded our surrender. We offered diplomacy, you chose coercion. We offered cooperation, you chose domination. Now you will learn what humans do when diplomacy fails. Empress Aquella moved her tentacles in what might have been defeat. How do we negotiate with beings who can destroy us without warning? The hologram of Admiral Hyojin appeared alongside. Taeho. You negotiate honestly. You offer fair terms. You treat us as equals instead of children. You remember that humans tried to solve this peacefully before you forced us to solve it violently. Elder Crystalline asked the question that terrified her most. What if we refuse to negotiate? Captain Boram's scarred face appeared in the hologram. Then you discover what Geneva Protocol 8 looks like. And 9. And 10. We have contingencies for every possible response you might choose. The chamber erupted in desperate questions from delegates who were beginning to understand the scope of human preparation. How long have you been planning this? Demanded War Chief Gorthak. Dr. Minsu's image joined the human representatives. We began developing these protocols during our own civil wars. We refined them when we realized that someday we might encounter species that viewed us as threats. We hoped never to use them. Why did we not detect your operatives? Asked the Thek delegation. Captain Huansu answered from his invisible ship. Because you were looking for human fleets and human armies. You were not looking for human individuals who had learned to think like you do. Brightavara flickered weakly. How many more humans are hidden throughout our territories? The human representatives exchanged glances before President Da-Un's voice joined the conference from Earth. Enough to ensure that this situation never happens again. Ambassador Zethamar of the Rillian Confederation spoke for many smaller species when he asked, what assurance do we have that humanity will not use these methods against other species in the future? Ambassador Taeho's expression became genuinely sad. You have the same assurance we had when we joined the galactic community 6 months ago. The promise that civilized beings can resolve their differences through diplomacy rather than force. You broke that promise when you demanded our surrender. We hope you will not break it again. Elder Crystalline realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed in the past week. You are saying that any species that threatens humanity will face these same tactics. Admiral Hyojin nodded. We are saying that humanity will never again allow another species to demand our surrender. We tried to be the neighbors you wanted us to be. You preferred us to be the neighbors you feared us to be. The emergency session continued for hours as alien representatives tried to understand how completely they had misjudged human nature. 6 months after the first alien fleets had moved toward human space with confidence and contempt, the same representatives who had dismissed humanity as primitive children now sat in the conference room of the Geneva complex on Earth. The journey to humanity's homeworld had been a pilgrimage of defeat for beings who had never known what it meant to lose. The Geneva complex had been chosen deliberately. This was where humanity had once signed treaties to limit their own capacity for destruction during their civil wars. Now it would host the negotiations that would determine whether the galaxy could find peace after learning what humans were truly capable of. Ambassador Taeho entered the conference room with the same calm demeanor he had displayed 6 months earlier. Behind him, Admiral Hyojin and Dr. Sora took their familiar positions. The only difference was that now the alien delegates stood when the humans entered, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable before the war. Elder Veltari Crystalline had traveled to Earth despite the damage to her crystal matrix. The sonic attacks had left permanent marks on her structure, but she had insisted on attending personally. Ambassador Taeho, we come seeking peace. War Chief Gorthak looked nothing like the proud warrior who had mocked human proposals months before. His armor was clean, but his eyes held the distant look of someone who had seen too much. Honorable humans, the Kethvar submit to your wisdom. The Thek delegation had managed to achieve temporary unity for the negotiations, but their voices still carried the fractured quality that remained from the psychological attacks. HFYPrimes acknowledge human superiority. Collective seeks mercy. Empress Aquella moved slowly through the water channels that had been specially installed for her comfort. The gesture of accommodation was not lost on any of the delegates. The Morden Empire requests terms for surrender. Brightavara of the Luxani flickered weakly in her containment field. Her energy form had been reduced by nearly half during the conflict. The Luxani seek understanding of human requirements. Taeho activated the same holographic display he had used 6 months earlier. The map showed the outer rim systems that had started the entire conflict. Thank you all for coming to Earth. We hope we can reach an agreement that serves everyone's interests. The words were almost identical to his opening statement from the failed peace talks, but now they carried a weight that made every alien delegate pay attention. War Chief Gorthak spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you require of us? Dr. Sora consulted the same datapad she had used before. Our requirements have not changed. Humanity seeks shared mining rights in 12 systems, with equal distribution of resources among all 6 species. We want recognition as equal members of the galactic community. We ask for respect for our territorial sovereignty. Elder Crystalline's damaged structure flickered with what might have been disbelief. That is all? The same terms you offered before? Admiral Heejin nodded. Those were fair terms 6 months ago. They remain fair terms today. The Thek delegation buzzed with confused harmonics. Human victory complete. Why not demand total submission? Why not claim conquered territory? Ambassador Taeho leaned back in his chair. Because we never wanted your territory. We wanted your respect. The question is, whether you are prepared to give us what we asked for peacefully, or whether you need more convincing. Empress Aquila moved her tentacles in patterns that expressed profound confusion. You could demand anything. Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are defenseless. Our people fear you more than death itself. President Da Yun joined the conference via holographic link from Seoul. The goal was never to conquer you. The goal was to teach you that threatening humanity has consequences. We hope you have learned that lesson. Brightavara pulsed with colors that conveyed desperate hope. Will you stop the attacks? Will you allow us to rebuild? Captain Boram entered the conference room and took a position near the door. Her presence was a reminder of what human specialists could accomplish when civilization broke down. The attacks will stop when we have a signed peace treaty and evidence that you intend to honor it. War Chief Gorthak asked the question that haunted every alien leader. How do we know you will not use these methods against us again? Dr. Minsu appeared via holographic link from his classified facility. You have the same guarantee we had when we joined the galactic community. The promise that civilized beings resolve their differences through negotiation rather than force. Elder Crystalline's voice carried musical notes of desperation. But you have shown that you can destroy us at any time. Admiral Heejin's expression was as hard as stone. And you have shown that you will threaten our freedom when you think you can get away with it. The difference is that we offered you peace first. You chose war first. The Thek delegation managed to ask a coherent question. What prevents future conflicts? Ambassador Taeho activated a new display showing proposed changes to galactic law. We suggest establishing protocols for dispute resolution that prevent any species from demanding another species' surrender. We recommend creating enforcement mechanisms that protect smaller civilizations from bullying by larger ones. Empress Aquila studied the proposals. You want to change how the galaxy governs itself. President Da-Un's hologram nodded. We want to ensure that what happened to humanity never happens to any other species. We want a galaxy where disputes are resolved through negotiation rather than threats. Brightavara flickered with realization. You are not just seeking peace with us. You are trying to create lasting peace for everyone. Captain Huansu's voice came through the communication system from his ship in orbit. We learned something during our civil wars. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice. When beings are treated fairly, they do not need to fight. War Chief Gorthak looked at the human delegation with something approaching wonder. You could have enslaved us. You could have taken everything we have. Instead, you offer us laws that protect us from each other. Dr. Sora smiled for the first time since the negotiations began. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We wanted to join it as equals. You forced us to prove that we deserve equality. The treaty negotiations continued for 3 days, but the outcome was never in doubt. The alien civilizations agreed to every human proposal and several additional concessions that they offered voluntarily. The mining rights were expanded to include 20 systems instead of 12. Human territorial sovereignty was guaranteed by all signatories. Humanity was granted permanent seats on all major galactic councils. But the most significant change was the establishment of the Galactic Protection Protocols. Any species that threatened another with demands for surrender would face intervention from all other civilizations. The galaxy would never again allow one group to bully another into submission. Elder Crystalline signed the treaty with movements that created beautiful light patterns despite her damaged structure. The Veltari pledged to honor these agreements and to protect all species from the kind of treatment we attempted to impose on humanity. War Chief Gorthak's signature was firm, despite his trembling hands. The Kethvar swear by our ancestors that we will never again mistake peaceful intentions for weakness. The Thek delegation achieved perfect unity for their signature. Collective promises adherence to new protocols. Hivemind commits to peaceful coexistence. Empress Aquella moved her tentacles in graceful patterns as she signed. The Morden Empire pledges to uphold these principles and to remember the lessons we have learned. Brightavara used the last of her energy to create a brilliant flash as she added her signature. The Luxani promised to honor these agreements and to help enforce them against any who would break them. Ambassador Teho signed for humanity with the same calm precision he had brought to every negotiation. Humanity pledges to uphold these agreements and to defend them against all threats. As the ceremony concluded, War Chief Gorthak asked one final question. Will you teach other species to fight as you do? Admiral Hyajin considered the question carefully. We will teach the galaxy the most important lesson humanity ever learned. War is not glorious. War is not honorable. War is not a game. War is what happens when civilization fails completely. President Dayun's hologram looked at each alien delegate. We will teach you that when civilization fails, those who survive are the ones who are willing to do whatever it takes to protect what they love. We hope that knowledge will motivate everyone to ensure that civilization never fails again. Captain Boram stepped forward as the delegates prepared to leave. You came to our first meeting thinking you could intimidate us into submission. You learned that humans respond to intimidation by becoming something you never want to see again. Remember that lesson. The alien delegates departed Earth with a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the newcomer species that could be dismissed or threatened. They had become the species that other civilizations looked to for protection and guidance. 3 years later, when the aggressive Zentari Empire attempted to demand tribute from smaller species in the Outer Rim, they received a simple message from Earth. The Galactic Protection Protocols are now in effect. Withdraw your fleets and return to your own territory immediately.